Hello everyone, hope all of you are doing good. So let's move on to day 8 and the important concept of rights. As per the UPSC examination pattern, okay, rights appears after every 2 years and the frequency of the concept of human rights is more. Fine? So let's see what all aspects that you have to cover. Now you have to study even these themes in depth. Why? Because there can be a sudden question that will come. For example, students ignore a lot of topics like what is Ronald Dworkin's view on rights as trumps, okay, and it just suddenly emerged, and for so many years it has not been asked. Rather, always the natural rights, legal rights, tradition has multicultural perspective on rights has been frequently asked. But they asked rights as trumps as a theme, okay, and that too for 15 marks. So in such scenario, ensure that these themes are very well detailed, prepared. Fine? So yes, we know the concept of rights, and along with rights also comes correspondingly the concept of duties. So you should also know the concept of duties and rights debate. The notion of political obligation also comes in here, okay. Then various theories of rights from natural, legal, historical. What is Lasky's view? Very prominent view, libertarian theory of rights, and also the right to property has also been asked, right, already. Fine. Then social welfare theory of rights, Dworkin's view on rights, Rawls on rights is also a possible question that can come. Multicultural perspective on rights, so yes, you should also know about the Asian values debate. Fine. Then the concept of human rights, their origin, what is the theme, to what extent they are derived from natural rights. Fine. What is the scope of this human rights, state and human rights, 3 generation of human rights. Fine. And multicultural perspective on rights, yes, again linked with the Asian values debate. Fine. Now, so let's move to today's question. I've given such a broad question because we'll just revise the entire theme in this particular question. All right? So let's read the question. What is the question saying? What do you understand by the concept of rights? Okay? And briefly describe. So question is briefly. Okay? Describe various theories of right. The question is for 10 marks. Now let's move to understanding this. So question has asked meaning of rights. Meaning and theories. Meaning and theories. All right? So if we look at the concept of right, so in modern political philosophy, okay, if we look at, because yes, it is modern in this sense, the concept, all right, because it begins when declaration within United States of America, right, declaration within France has been adopted, where rights became the central concept. So that's why we say it is a modern concept in that way. Okay, so yes, in modern political philosophy, when we talk of the concept of rights, what does it mean? So rights is about individual in this sense. Okay, now there is more depth. All right? And when we talk about the rights of an individual, which means we talk about limitations on the state. So it is on the limits on the state. Okay? But what is right in itself? All right? So right in itself is what is due to somebody. Okay? What is due to somebody. And due on what basis? What is the basis of being due something? Which means your status, okay? It can be as a citizen, okay? As a human rights, okay? As a member of any group, so differentiated rights and other things that we talk about, even as a member of a group that you can enjoy certain rights. So right is something which is due to any person by the virtue of his belonging to either being a human citizen or a member of a group. And essentially, it means that it is the limitations on the state. However, there is positive as well as negative aspect of rights. Negative aspect, which means that state does not interfere, okay? And positive, which means it creates enabling conditions so that rights can be fulfilled, okay? So firstly, we explain in modern political philosophy what is the concept of rights, all right, in that sense. And then we say, so don't start your question anytime by explaining a thinker's perspective on rights. When they have asked, what do you mean by rights? Explain in the most general, simple, and lucid way what is the concept. Okay? And then we talk about why they are important, why they are significant, and then we can say what are the different theories. So yes, Lasky's statement is very important in that regard. So after explaining the meaning of rights, you talk of what is Lasky's view. Okay, it is the conditions which is very important for the fulfillment of and development of personality of an individual. Okay, so in this sense, he talks about the significance of rights. Now, so if we talk about the theories of rights, okay, so first we say it's all starting with the natural right tradition, okay? The natural right tradition in the work of Locke, okay, who establishes the contractual basis. And yes, there is also the teleological basis that has been spoken by Thomas Paine, okay, and T.H. Green as well. Fine? So natural right, which means status of a person as a human, okay? But in the sense of Locke, he says it is what? Natural rights is something that every person enjoys by the virtue of reason, okay? Even in the what? State of nature, fine? And yes, he establishes the right to life, liberty, property. He emphasizes on these things, all right? So the first tradition is natural right tradition. In contrast and in criticism to this natural right tradition, okay, comes in the tradition is the legal right theorist, legal rights theorist. This legal rights theory, okay, so the first theory that we will be talking of is the natural right. The second aspect we will be talking of is the legal right. It is by the utilitarians, okay, utilitarians like Bentham, okay, even Hobbes says that there is nothing like natural rights that exist, okay. Rights, which means there is legal recognition by the state, okay. So even Hobbes says covenant without swords are nothing, okay, but false. Fine? And what does Bentham say? So Bentham calls natural rights as anarchical fallacies, which means they hold no significance, okay? And it is like a terrorist language. Until there is the element of enforceability, until the state recognizes rights, okay? It makes no sense. However, there are other scholars, okay, who call rights as social claims, which means it is not the state which is giving right. Okay, because if state is giving right, it also implies state can take away rights. So rights emanate from what? Society and not the state. Fine? So natural right tradition will be looking at rights like a social claim that way. But in the legal right tradition, it is the legal recognition of rights that is spoken of. Right? Then the third theory we will be talking about is by whom? Historical theory of rights. Who talks of historical theory of rights? That rights have emanated as a result of the tradition, the customs that are there in any kind of society. So it is the theory given, historical theory of rights is given by Edmund Burke. Edmund Burke. Okay, so they are conservatives. Now, what does Burke say? Okay, so Burke says it is a product of conventions, it is a product of customs and tradition. But if there is a key limitation in this historical theory of rights. What? Which means if we say that a right is emanating from history, then how sati, which was historically being performed, is it continuing even today? Is infanticide continuing even today, which was happening early? No. So it cannot always be determined by the history. Is this understood? Okay. Now, after historical theory of rights, we will be talking of the tradition Now, this legal rights also has the context of, understanding everything in the terms of welfare. So the social welfare tradition of rights is also actually deriving the same utilitarian basis only, okay? So they also, the social welfare theory, Zakaria, Shafi, Roscoe Pound, they are also talking about what? They are also talking about welfare as a concept to establish the theory of rights in the present term. But then the concept of welfare has also undergone change. So it is not simply pain and pleasure like the classical liberals or Bentham talk, okay? Neo-utilitarian ideas talk about what? They talk about preference and satisfaction, okay? So even the concept of welfare has undergone a lot of change. It is no more simply the greatest happiness of the greatest number. Neo-utilitarianism has also come into being, okay? Fine? Now, so the fourth tradition that now we will be talking about is whom? We will be talking of Rawls' idea, okay? So Rawls is also coming in context of what? Rawls also criticizes the utilitarian tradition, because the utilitarian tradition is emphasizing on greatest happiness of greatest number, okay? So it is like a community right in that way, right? Maximum number. But Rawls says no, we cannot violate. There is an inviolability that exists. So he emphasizes on the importance of rights for an individual, and not the utilitarian principle of the greatest happiness of greatest number. So his idea also come in regard of the utilitarians only, okay? Is it understood? Clear? So we first talk of natural right tradition, the legal right tradition, Bentham, what is their basis? Then the historical theory of rights, okay? Then what is Rawls' idea? Then you talk of what does Ronald Dworkin say about rights. Ronald Dworkin. Okay? Now, Ronald Dworkin is actually, in his work, taking rights seriously. Taking rights seriously. All right? What does Ronald Dworkin say? So he says that this utilitarian principle again is very, very problematic. Okay? Utilitarian principle is very problematic because it is focusing on what? It is focusing on the greatest happiness of greatest number. But the basis of rights is what? Okay? So there are two parties if we look at rights. So one is the right holder, which means it can be any person who holds the right to something. And the other is the right observer, which means if someone holds a right, the person, it naturally, brings in some kind of what? Natural duty on the part of others to ensure that this person who is holding the right, his right is protected. So it is the moral basis of right, which he is talking. So this right holder, okay, his right cannot be violated because we are looking at a larger principle or protection of the rights of what? Of the community at large, right? As the utilitarians say. So he says no. Because rights are based on the concept of human dignity, right? And if it is based on the concept of dignity, it cannot be violated for any other reason. And yes, this both right holder as well as right observer, okay, both do have certain set of rights that he is talking of, fine. So just note down 2 points. He makes a key distinction, okay. Also write down actually the concept of human welfare when we are talking of welfare in the terms of the utilitarian tradition, how that is the basis of rights. So welfare, there was greatest happiness. So there are these neo-utilitarians who make preference satisfaction. So maybe I might get as an individual more satisfaction in running a bicycle, okay? Maybe it is not in the welfare of everybody. It cannot be that all masses enjoy. But what gives me satisfaction, which activity I prefer over the other, is what they emphasize. So it is neo-utilitarian tradition. Just note down the names of the neo-utilitarian tradition also. Okay, neo-utilitarian tradition. You can say that how this has, led the concept of utility being shifted from pleasure and pain principle to what? To preference or satisfaction. So neo-utilitarians, we have John von Neumann. John von Neumann. Okay, write down the second scholar. It is Oscar Morgenstern. Oscar Morgenstern. Oscar Morgenstern. Okay, fine. And they are talking of what idea? From pleasure and pain to preference and satisfaction as the basis. Preference or satisfaction as the basis, okay? So if, a legal theory of rights is asked in detail, you can say that how the concept of welfare, human welfare itself has gone under change from the classical tradition to the neo-utilitarianism. All right? Now, so we were here. Fine. So Ronald Dworkin. Also note down two things of Ronald Dworkin, because I don't know how many of you would have even prepared this idea. Okay. Right. He talks about right to something, right to something, right to something, and right to certain things, right to do certain things, right to do certain things. Okay? Now, in this right to do certain things, point out that every right holder is morally free, okay, to do this. Okay, morally free, right, to do certain things. Fine? And it is in one's own interest and it deserves protection. Okay? Right? So the reason is what? Obviously, it cannot be all reasons. Fine? The reason should be what? The reason should be moral reason. And what is moral basis here? Okay, it is human dignity. It is human dignity. And he is obviously very critical again of the utilitarian tradition only. So we will always talk of concepts that are there in context to each other. Okay? So we also spoke of Rawls also already. Fine? Rawls, inviolability of an individual rights he talks of, and not emphasize of the community at large or the greatest happiness of greatest number, like is spoken of by the utilitarians. Fine? Now let's move to the next notion. So we also talk of the libertarian theory of rights. And this libertarian theory, okay, bases right to property, and it also talks of the entitlement theory of justice, and doesn't believe in any end state, which means any goal or purpose with which distribution occurs. So they emphasize on what? The libertarian theory talk about the right to private property, right to. And then who will come naturally after this theory? Okay, it is the Marxists. So Marxists criticize, and they say that if the state itself is a class state, how can we expect that the laws that are formulated in the superstructure, okay, how they can be for the protection of the proletariat, when the whole superstructure has been designed for the benefit of the ruling class, okay, in this class state. So Marxists say, firstly, obviously, complete abolition of the private property, and they don't believe in the concept of rights. Rights is more within the liberal tradition only, okay? Fine, so they don't believe in the concept of right because they consider who as an instrument, okay, state of class exploitation, right? So then say that yes, the whole concept deepened of rights with human rights in the 20th century, okay? And here we had the multicultural perspectives on right that came about, multicultural perspective on rights, and Asian values guided by which declaration? Bangkok Declaration, okay? So you can talk about these two perspectives also within the human right tradition, okay? And yes, origin of human rights is also located in the liberal tradition only in the natural rights, okay? So there is continuity in that way, fine? Now let's move to the next concept. Is all this understood? All the theories, in what context we will write which? Structure is clear. First, the concept of rights, Lasky's statement on rights, okay? Then the natural rights, legal rights, what is the basis of the legal right tradition? Then historical theory of rights, who criticizes the legal right tradition and the utilitarian philosophy in this of explanation of rights. Rawls criticizes, Ronald, Dworkin criticizes. So you talk about Rawls' idea, you talk of Ronald, Dworkin's idea, okay? And then we talk of the libertarian theory of rights. We then talk of the Marxist concept, how they falsify the whole concept itself, okay? And yes, how the concept of rights deepened with human right tradition. So communitarian perspective on rights, you can write even the multicultural perspective on rights, okay? So broadly, and then say the rights as a concept keeps on deepening, okay? Fine. In the 21st century, with more and more rights coming into being, like right to privacy, right to health, right to education. Is it clear? Now, let's move to the second question. So we have clearly understood, see the sequence. Okay? Now the second question is, elaborate on the right to property. Elaborate on the right to property. Okay, so question is asking right to property. Right to property, okay? Now, so how do we first understand the concept of property and private property as such, okay? So actually, property is not a thing as we understand in the common parlance, okay? Property is not a thing. What is property? It is actually a relationship of ownership. It is a relationship of ownership, all right, between the object and the holder of that object. Is it clear? So first we explain that property is not a thing. It is a right. It is a right. Because it is establishing a relation of ownership. Is it clear? Now, then we explain that private property and the right to property has been advocated by which all scholars, okay? So we can say liberals. Who else has defended right to property and private property? Aristotle. Conservatives. Okay, they are what? Justifying property. They are justifying property because of its economic efficiency. people get rewards for their labor, okay, for their skills, for they feel a sense of ownership, they feel a sense of achievement. So property as an institution continues to stay. Is it clear? So first we talk of the right to private property in Aristotle, liberals and conservatives tradition. So they are not giving any moral basis of why we should have, but what is the idea? The idea is economic efficiency. Economic efficiency. And then we will be moving to whose idea, okay? Then we will be talking of the concept, the right to property, okay, given by John Locke. So if a human labor has been mixed, he justifies the right to private property as a natural right. As a what kind of right? As a natural right. And he poses some sort of a limitations also. So he talks of the spoilage, sufficiency, okay? He talks of labor limitations. So he talks of 3 kinds of limitations on the right to property, and he says it is a natural right which cannot be violated, which cannot be taken away. Fine? Now, so the second school of thought, okay, which talks about, fine? Now here is the idea that exists within neoliberals. Neoliberals, all right? So we talk that how they defend right to private property, and even they say that if a person has done enough justice with respect to acquiring the property, if the person has done enough justice with respect to transfer of property, nobody can take away that property, okay? And state should not intervene in this regard, all right? So you explain the views of Nozick and Hayek in this regard. Now, then who will criticize this idea? Who will criticize this idea? Okay, so this idea will be criticized by the Marxist. By the Marxist. Okay, so they give a very radical view and they talk about the abolition of private property. They talk of the abolition of private property. Okay, note down, just note down the structure fast. First, define what is property, what is the concept of property, how right to private property, okay, has been considered as an important right. So then you talk of Aristotle, utilitarians, and economic theorists, then liberals, conservative theorists, and natural right theorists. Then I'm very sorry, libertarians here, just make this, it is libertarians. Okay, right? We'll put it in this header, in this context. Fine? Neoliberals also, but yes. Then we talk about whom? Okay. Then we talk Marxist idea. And after that, we will say that this institution of private property or the right to property has been conserved in modern democratic states, all right? And even socialist, okay, right, do not talk about its complete abolition, but only talk of reforms that need to be brought. Reforms that need to be brought. Fine? So then you can talk of the right to property within the Indian Constitution, how it is no more the fundamental right, but yes, constitutional right also, because it is there within the Indian Constitution, Article 300A. And yes, even the other laws protect it in multiple other ways. So we can also call it as a legal right. Fine? Just note down the conclusion. Note down the conclusion. Right? Even political theorists who feared the emergence of economic inequality, like Rousseau, and the modern social democrats have been unwilling to abolish the right to property. To abolish the right to property. Okay? Fine? So you can conclude on this note. Fine? So all the very best. I hope today's explanation has actually revised the entire concept of rights and all theories. And note down the new scholars also. Do that value addition and enrichment. Fine? Thank you so much. All the best.